There's always something a little nerve-wracking about DMing for a new group of people for the first time. A certain tension fills you no matter how well you do or don't know the people. If you're anything like me, you feel no small amount of pressure to ensure that everyone is happy, entertained, and fully understanding of what they can or should be doing. Welcome back to the Mightier Pen, where I share narrative tips for the story-driven DM. Because while the pen can be mightier than the sword, it only becomes so with training. I'm Kate, an editor by trade, a writer by hobby, and a DM by default. Today, I want to share a story from my own table and how I've dealt with an unusual character build. For any of my players who may be watching or listening, this episode is free of any spoilers, and know that I love you all very much. I've only ever DM'd for two groups of people. One was made up of two of my closest friends, their spouses, and my sister. It didn't run very long, as we all lived in different states and time zones and were trying to play remotely with very limited resources. I had taken several one-shots and cobbled them together into a longer storyline. It was a great first experience, as we were all relatively new to D&D and were very understanding of the struggle we all had in remembering the rules. The game I currently run is one we play in person, with 3 friends and coworkers as my players. For this game, I've completely homebrewed the world and story. I've long since realized that in both writing and D&D, I am obsessed with world building. And of my players, one had played enough to feel comfortable with things, one had never played but was an avid Critical Role fan, and one knew absolutely nothing about D&D but loves books and fantasy stories. So our current game started with a pretty large learning curve. It was one I fully expected as we set up, and I didn't have a problem with teaching as we played. I decided to start them at level 1, to give them time to learn each thing their character can do and not overwhelm them. They had some really awesome character concepts: a rogue from a noble family, a druid searching for answers, and a sailor turned paladin seeking revenge. It's taken some time, but we've really settled into a rhythm and found our stride, and at least in my opinion, the game is going really well. But there have definitely been some hiccups along the way. Level 1 is hard to both play and DM, as it sets the foundation for a lot of character traits and arcs, but without the ability to follow through on them. And while I'm glad I started my inexperienced players there, I did struggle a little bit to create encounters and situations that would play to their strengths. Some of it was just due to low levels, and some of it was simply adjusting to each other as players and DM, learning preferred styles of play and what everyone was comfortable with. For example, the paladin at our table has a fantastic backstory. The player is incredibly creative and gave me a lot to work with, but she has a build that I didn't really know what to do with at first. Charisma was her highest stat. In the long run, I could see why. It would be her spellcasting modifier, and she took proficiency in intimidation to really create the personality she wanted for her former sailor. But at level 1, charisma was pretty useless for her. See, the paladin's player, and character really, is more of a combat-oriented player. When faced with a problem, paladin wants to punch it. So despite having the highest charisma of the group, she rarely wanted to be the one doing the talking. It made for several moments of frustration early on. Because her highest stat wasn't her attack stat, she missed more often in combat than she wanted to. At level 1, she didn't have her spell casting yet. Given her reluctance to be the face of the group, she often felt that she couldn't accomplish what she wanted to, killing monsters, and she wasn't super comfortable doing the things she had good modifiers for, RP. I didn't want to discourage my player or tell her how to build or play her character, so I tried my best to create situations where she could still shine. A lot of it simply came down to paying attention. What parts of the session did she respond to the most? What caught and held her interest? Those sorts of things. And part of it was simply time. Now that the players are level 6, her dexterity, her main attack stat, is equal to her charisma, and she now has an extra attack. She has access to her spells, which she's able to use to great effect. She's gotten a little more comfortable with roleplay and talking to NPCs, and I've been able to give her opportunities to use her preferred skills. And I've learned to layer things, if I can. One of my favorite encounters, and one of my players' favorites too, involved solving a riddle to open an unlocked door. I may go into the details of it and how I'd change it if I ran it again in a future episode, but it wasn't just a puzzle. There was a combat aspect too. It wasn't a terribly high stakes combat, but it gave my paladin something to do, protect her friends, so that they could focus on figuring out the trick to the door. Little things like that can really allow a player to lean into their character traits, even if it's not the big moment of destroying some massive monster. So, quick tips for dealing with an unusual character build. 1. Let your player build the character they want, even if it doesn't make sense to you at the time. I didn't realize at level 1 that the paladin really wanted to be able to use spells, not just smites. So the high charisma actually did make more sense than I originally thought. 2. Pay attention to the things your player likes and doesn't like. You won't be able to make every situation interesting to them, especially if, like me, you have some players who love RP and some who really don't like it. But there are ways to include their preferences on things that might otherwise not interest them, like the riddle I mentioned earlier. 3. Talk to your player. This is something I wish I had done a better job of. In the long run, I came to understand why she picked the build she did and have seen it pay off, but I should have done more up front than simply ask, "Are you sure that's the stat array you want?" It would have saved me a lot of stress and uncertainty. 4. This might sound a little harsh, but let your players struggle with the build they choose. Sure, it could be seen as a "you chose this and now you have to live with it," but I prefer to see it as a chance for literal character growth. I think it's something that a lot of players and DMs overlook at the start of a game. A lot of people know what they want their character to be, but don't think about the arc they might take in the process of becoming that. Most people want to play a hero, but to me it's more interesting narratively if the PCs become heroes over the course of the game. And that means beginning at less than that ideal. So let them start in a place that hints at the ultimate form without meeting all of their goals. As they level up and increase their skills, they'll become that idealized version. Got your own takes on unusual character builds? Share it in the comments. I'm Kate, and this has been The Mightier Pen. Keep honing those storytelling skills, and may your heroes always find ways to shine.